All right, enough screwing around. Today, we're going to be doing some stuff with MAF curves and tuning the MAF in our system. And so before we even get into that, we're going to talk about the workflow. Okay. So the workflow here, step one, in a normal life, when we tune, we start with MAF, mass airflow calibration. And we do that because, let me zoom out a little more even here. Okay. We do that because if I know fuel, which is my X, or I'm sorry, if I know air, using a sensor, I know how much air is coming into the engine, then I know how much fuel I need, because that is a calculation the computer is going to do for me. So if I know my X, I know Y, which is really what we're saying, a function of X, for those of you who are mathematically inclined. So normally I work on that first. And MAF I like to do because MAF usually takes hold during a static state. Idle and cruising. Okay. So for all the points where I'm just humming along at about 2,000 RPM, or I'm idling during the brief period I'm cold starting for 30 seconds, right? I have a steady stream of air coming in, and I know exactly how much fuel I need, which is why I work on MAF first. Then I face the problem of, what about partial throttle, right? So that's where we can do two things. We can log MAF in transient states in some workflows for other cars, and then I would take it through to the logical conclusion of wide open throttle. In the world of the S650, though, we move to speed density. And speed density, like this relationship, for speed density, if I know load, and if I know RPM, then I know fuel. Okay? Same relationship, but instead of just one variable, now I'm going to worry about two variables. And load is not quite air, right? Load breaks into two pieces, which is in fact air flow, but it's also barometric pressure. Say baro. Okay. So now I'm sensing two things, air and barometric pressure, along with RPM. And all three of those go into a fuel calculation. And because baro is one of the things I'm accounting for, which I don't really up here, I can map across a whole bunch of dimensions, and I can account for every situation, is what I'm trying to say. So then we would do speed density across the board comprehensively, and it would let us account for transient states, right? Revving. And then ultimately, I can do it at wide open throttle, right? And between MAF, I'll still do wide open throttle. Okay? So if I map all the static states with MAF, and then I map the transient states with speed density, and I do watt for both of those, all of them combined give me a tune, right, for the basic calibration. From there, I need to worry about torque. And before or after, or both, I'm going to worry about enrichment. Forgive my horrible writing. Enrichment. Once I've tackled enrichment, my wife left me. Once I've tackled enrichment, we are going to look at spark. And then the last thing we do, as always, is log, which often brings us right back up. And so once a season, we might log, right, to make sure we're all good. Okay, so there's your workflow. Now, let's pause a minute and we'll start again. So for all things MAF, what we're going to see when we begin working on our MAF is a function, right? Y equals f of x, which in this case is going to be air on this side, which we're going to measure in gram seconds, grams per second. We'll need to set that up in the software if it's kilogram hours, for example, or pounds, right? And then over here, usually we have a voltage. And it's usually something like 2 decimal place millivolts. So like 1.13 millivolts, 1.18 millivolts, right? And it tends to go between about 1 to about 4.5. I'm sorry, and that shouldn't be millivolts. I apologize. That should just be volts. Roughly in that range. And the function we get is, so at low airflow down here, I'm going to have this as a corresponding voltage, which might be, 0.59. Then here, a little bit more air, a little bit more voltage, a little bit more air, a little bit more voltage. And as I go, I'm going to start getting a shape. Like that. And so within the ECU, at this very moment, is a map just like this that has this shape. And it's pretty good. The engineers took their time and they were careful and they set this up. But mass production being what it is, it's kind of a giant stochastic lottery. Do you mind? Go back to the GM channel. Okay. So it's in the computer, and they set it up pretty well, but it may vary because of just chaos, right? And so the actual shape that is considered calibrated, so what do I mean by this? This shape may be off by as much as 5 to 10%, right? And so again, if air equals fuel, because of this calculation, if my air is off 5%, my fuel is off 5%. And that could be rich or it could be lean. And what's monitoring that are my sativtas and my latiftas, collectively known as my trims. Alexa, stop. Our automated lives. All right. So the computer in closed loop, by the way, remember this is all closed loop. The computer is performing this calculation, delivering the fuel based on the amount of air, tracking through the oxygen sensors how it's doing, because we're in closed loop. And the statiftas and latiftas are saying this is how far off you are. And as we get those results and compile them, we begin to realize that this curve maybe needs to shift this way. So the calibrated curve might look like that. Right, we were lean, so we have to richen up. Or maybe we have to go this way. And maybe that's the calibrated curve. Even worse, what if down here we have to come this way, and up here we have to go that way? It could well be I've got something like that. And this curve should be smooth. Should be like a nice, yeah, right? It could be, though, that there's a weird point somewhere in the middle where, for whatever reason, the data to get closest optimally has a shape like this, which would drive any tuner crazy, right? I want a nice smooth curve. I don't like this little hump, right? But maybe this is a breakpoint. We don't know, right? But you got to follow the data. That's the whole thing. So this is what we're doing today, okay? We're going to go pull the tune off the car, make sure we're working with the latest file. We're going to examine the MAF curve. Then we're going to go out and we're going to do a MAF calibration test run, right? We're going to gather data. Then we're going to come back and look at the data and adjust this table to calibrate it and bring it truer to the calibrated shape. And if you can do that, you're starting tuning, right? You're on step one of that workflow. All right, so let's get to it. All right, here we go. We've got the tools of the trade here. The MPVI3 is plugged in the OBD2 port. We have our snazzy yellow wire connecting it to the USB-C on the laptop, where we've got HPTuners rocking and rolling. Our goal now is to read the file, make sure we're dealing with the latest, in case there's been any forward updates or any weird shit. So we're just turn on the car. I have a manual, so we didn't put the clutch in, right? The engine's not on. If you have an automatic, good luck. I'm not sure what the procedure is, but you want to turn the car accessories on, right? Not the actual engine. From here, we can go to flash and we can start to read this vehicle. Okay, now it's talked to it, and off we go. A couple of things. That hardware there, that MG1 CS036, that is the model of the ECU that matches one of the various types of ECU that HPTuners has access to. So you just want to make sure that you're doing an S650 that you are using that. It's pretty self-explanatory once you're in there. For operating system, that's just inside baseball in case you ever need to call HPTuners and tell them what's going on. We are reading fairly quickly. In the beginning, this could sometimes take 10-15 minutes when the software was first installed and up and running. Since then, the HPTuners teams have really optimized this nice and quick now, which brings up the point. You're going to want to, as you work with the software, anytime you start a new session, I wish I could click that, I won't. If you go into help and about, it'll tell you if you need to update. I am using the beta version. You should probably be using the beta version unless time has passed and the alpha version now has S650 support for your vehicle. If you're trying to use your MPVI3 and it is not able to perform this operation, the first read, although I've read mine before, chances are you want to update that software, make sure you're using the beta, make sure the hardware matches, right? All those little things. HPTuners can help you out. Otherwise, we just let this read, and when it's done, the system will tell you what to do. I think you turn the engine on and then off again. You certainly do that when you flash it. But that's it. So we'll finish up here. Oh, and another note. You've got to have internet if you're going to be doing this. Anytime you turn the software on, it's going to talk to the dongle here, and they're both collectively going to reach out to the internet, to the HPTuners servers, where it's going to check, is this version valid? Is it updated? Is it something we've seen before, right? It handshakes with mothership. If you are not able to do that, there you go. Turn it off and on again. If you are not able to do that, then you're not going to be able to proceed. This matters when you're tuning out in the field, because if you want to make adjustments on the fly and you don't have a signal, you're not going to be able to. And we're going to do, I don't know, bass read. There you go. So let's go inside and we'll take a look at this bad boy. Okay, so here we are in the software, and having updated it and make sure we're connected to the internet. While I'm running the software here, you have to keep the MPVI3 dongle connected, because it does bitch at you if you disconnect it, right? There's a lot of handshaking still going on with the servers, right? So with that connected, here we are for MAF tuning, and you will see here, I've changed my file name. When I first logged in, I switched over from base read to a new tutorial file. So that's the one we're working with now. I suggest you do that. Name it for the phase of the workflow you're in, and have versions as you iterate. So 1.0 is the base, 1.1 will be the first tuning adjustment, 1.2 will be the second, right? And on we go. So that's how we've changed our file name. We go to Airflow. And within Airflow, on the General tab, we can see the mass airflow curves. There's two of them. And if I open this puppy up, you can see here, this is the curve. It looks familiar. A couple of things going on here. As you move across the curve, you will see that the circle dot that I'm hovering on matches over here in the boxes. So I can see this little bump, for example, corresponds to the 40 gram per second value tied to the 6,750 ticks on the voltage sensor. We talked previously about how this voltage sensor is a little raw and unfinished. It's the raw nibble transmission protocol converting analog to digital. You can look at the other video to hear more about that. For now, we just know that it's the voltage, right? And we have this nice smooth curve. So this is one of them, and this is the other one. They look pretty smooth, pretty uniform. We will see how the data holds up. A couple of things we need to think about as we get ready to tune on this. One is these are the breakpoints right now corresponding to the voltage. So this is the gram seconds, right? Every time we adjust this, we have to carry our breakpoints over, because this is what will be changing. So for example, if I find out that this cell was, 5% off or so, right? And it shouldn't be 28, it should be 27. When I change that, it changes the breakpoints for this. And that'll be something we account for later. So just put that in the back of your mind. You'll see when we proceed. Aside from that, nothing to do there right now. Just watch. When we do get ready to start doing MAF tuning, though, remember I spoke previously about how we have to turn off all the little tricks the CPU or the ECU has to quote unquote help us, right? One is the MAF adaption, which again by default is disabled, so we leave it disabled. We come here to the cylinder error anticipation, right? So this is the predictive modeler for transient states. We don't want to have that active, right? So we're going to go ahead and disable that. And you see here I got a red box. It's like, okay, you made a change. That's what that denotes. From there, these other items we leave set up. We're good with those. Drive modes, we're good with those. I do want to come over, however, to the fueling side of things. Okay, so yeah, instant fuel cutoff we leave enabled. That's the RPM rev limiter. There's three things we need to do, though, to prepare. for deceleration fuel cutoff. So this is what prevents being too rich and pops and burbles, and it helps protect the cat, among other things, right? But it's one of those things where the ECU will step in and make changes on behalf of us, right? And so we won't get to see how trimmed we are to the actual map. So we want to disable DFCO from happening. Now, when we do this, right, when we drive the car, we're only going to do MAF stuff. So when you get out there, right, we're not flooring it, we're not going crazy, right, because we're turning some stuff off here that helps keep us running right. So we're going to go into sort of like a voluntary limp mode. And for the enable RPM, I'm going to jump this to from 1200 up to, say, 6500. Or actually, let's make it something absurd. Let's do 7200. Okay. And it's warning me, don't do that. No, let's not do that side predefined. Let's do, what if I go 7000? Okay, so the car would have to get above 7,000 before it starts allowing DCFO. And then the disable here is if we then go below this speed, it'll enable it. We don't want to have that happen. We're not going to go below 500, so we'll leave it there. So that has effectively turned off DFCO. That's one prep we have to make. Let's see, the other here is when I go to temp control. You see here we have catalyst protection. We also have some exhaust gas temp control. We're going to leave that alone, right? But as far as the catalyst protection here, you can see it's enabled. We have these temps. We don't really want to get above these temps, but we are going to disable this. Now again, what I've just done is turn off all of the protective software for my catalytic converter. If I go above temps, it's not going to step in, richen it up, and cool things down. So again, I don't want to go out and romp on it because I'll be melting my cats, right? I don't want to do that. Okay, and then the final thing is if we come to, it's in oxygen sensors. Here we have some long-term fuel trims, LTFTs. Now this is a point of contention, even with me, right? When I first tuned this, I actually left these enabled, and I had good luck tuning it because the ECU, again, is so quick. The LTFTs, they change every sort of 5-10 seconds, as opposed to in the past I've been on cars where the LTFT holds and is good for like 30, 40, 50 seconds, right, before it's moving around. Because this one is quicker, it's pretty good at telling us how far off we are trim, right? Best practice, though, let's do it. We're going to turn off LTFT learning. We're going to disable it. And what that does, by turning off the Latiftus, is I'm going to be beholden only to my Satiftus, the STFTs. They are going to be the ones in the log that I'll be looking at to see how far we're off. And you'll see in a minute what that means. But so there you go. That's it. To review, we're going to work on these models right here. I've turned off the cylinder air anticipation. I went to fuel. I disabled deceleration fuel cutoffs. I disabled my cap protections. And I turned off my LTFT learning. That now is good to go. So I'm going to save this. And we're going to see now what happened. It changed these values. They no longer look different. Just a reminder, you can always go to a compare file and compare it with the base. And it'll show you where you've made changes. And when you're putting the car back to where it should be, you really want to look at the comparison log. Which will give you, like, here's where I see differences, right? And you can then go to these and actually change things up. It'll go to that area, bang, right? Then when you're done, you can close that. So, all right, we should be good to go. We're going to flash this to the car, and then we'll see you out on the open road as we gather our data. Okay, folks, we are now at operating temp. I've got an engine oil temp of 201, 230 is full, but I've got a cylinder head temp of 186, 190 to 210 is usually operating. The key thing is my engine oil pressure is down to 26, right? You want to see it idle in the 20s. Car's good to go. I've still got a check engine light on.
that reminds you again, we are operating in a voluntary limp mode, right? We're not going out having fun right now. I've got the software here. We're going to go ahead and turn that on and record. If you've never seen that before, you press that button. Ding. Okay. And now we're populating, right? You can see I'm capturing values, including my LTFTs and STFTs, which look a little sus right now, so that's why we're doing this. When we get back to the house, we will start talking about our graphs, right? But we can see here that the LTFTs are 0, which is what we want because we disabled those. If we saw values, that would be strange. But our STFTs, look at them bounce around, okay? So we're gonna go grab some data while we log, and then we'll go home and we'll talk about histograms. All right, we're here. I'm just getting past the school into an area where I can comply with all traffic laws, make sure the speed limit is not broken here. So, okay. I happen to know there's a really nice straightaway once I get around this bend, so we're gonna go there. All right, folks, this is it. We're on a patch of road where the speed limit is gonna be just fine. There's nobody around us, right? Safety, safety, safety before you do this. But we are good to go. And we're now on the part of the road that I was here looking for. So we're going to drop to second gear. And I'm going to get down to about 2,000 RPM. There I am. And now I'm going to begin the MAF run. Very slowly moving through the power band. Listen. Not a good time for a call, sir. 4,000. Give it her all she's got, Captain. You can hear that engine, man. Nothing like a coyote. $5,000. $6,000. Okay, we're back at the house. We're recording. We get to do some of the fun stuff now, right? The math part and the heavy lifting. Anybody can learn this. It comes with time. It seems really weird at first, but then eventually it'll become old hat. So one thing that I've done, I had this prior to recording this one, but when I got back, I went up to my log file and I saved a log file. And it will automatically save the files for you. You can fish them out of a bucket, but it is better to save them in the folder where the tune is and follow the naming convention of the tune. So because the tune was tutorial MAF Tune 1.0 and it was an HPT, I changed it to MAF Tune 1.0 HPL for a HP log, right? And so now I have a log that matches the name of the tune. That helps you later on when you've got like 20 of these and you're going back to something maybe 4 or 5 steps ago. You know that these numbers, when they match up, the 1.0 to 1.0, that this is the log resulting from that tune. So you can see up here, this is the tune. I have it working. I have it in the window up above it. Okay. So we have all our values and we can start looking at what it is we got. And I'm glad I did this, and it's a good example for you guys. When I went to the LT fuel trim, And the graph here is telling me manifold absolute pressure in kilopascals, right? So the different loads right here, right? And then the different engine speeds, the RPMs. And we're not surprised to see the long-term fuel trims coming in at 0 because we turned that off. So this validates that what we did in the software works, right? And that is super important. If there's one thing I could advocate for, it's that this is it's science and engineering, right? It's black and white. You've got to establish chains of causation here. You do something in the software, you should see it in the log. So here's a great example of I turned off LTFTs and now I'm not seeing them, right? It proves out. When I go to my short terms, danger, Will Robinson, because look, there's all kinds of corrections it's making. But, and in one spot, I'm 15% lean. Now, luckily, our ECU can handle, I think, up to like 35% swings, right? So the car itself was not in any danger, but we've got some calibrating to do. And this graph's not going to help us. So what we're going to do is start making a new graph. Whew, apologies, a couple of interruptions. Okay, so we're working on our new table, and again, we're trying to measure the error here from the curve, right? So what we're interested in are trims. And if you open the parameter menu here, there's all kinds of stuff we can play with. We're going to shut down these for the moment. There's these parameters related to the engine, and a lot of these are driven by what HPTuners discovered while it was turning on the scanner. And then down here, there's some maths, right? And some of this is pre-made for us. And one of the really nice ones that HPTuners gives us is this fuel trim math. And there's 3 here that are interesting. LTFT plus FTFT, bank separated, is an amalgamation of the different bays, right? The 2 different cylinder bays, right? Then there's a split out. There's LTFT and STFT for bank 1 and LTFT, STFT for bank 2. Because we're working with A, or bank 1, I like to use this one. Now, there are other tuners out there that are using bank separated, and we're actually going to have a look at that. But for now, we're going to stick with bank 1. And you can see here I've now changed LTFT plus FTFT. And I'm going to change this to, for the title, below A. Okay. And now I'm grabbing this parameter, the trims, and they're going to express it as a percent. And I want them to go out to 2 decimal places. Okay. We're going to ignore these for the moment. So the other portion that we need to worry about is down here, columns and axis. We'll remember that this is a 2D chart. Okay, there's only 2 things we need to worry about. And this, we're already mapping the error, right? So we need to tie it to something with the values, right? And so what we want to do, normally we would grab the voltage and we would say, what's the error across the voltage? But we can't really grab that because we only have that weird cent AD number, okay? So to make up for this, what we end up having to do is copying the values that are here, the breakpoints for gram seconds, okay? And so again, I right-clicked on those. Well, first of all, I went up here to select all. I right-clicked, and I'm not copying with axis this time. And this is where details become important. Right now, I'm just going to copy, okay? And then I will come back down here, and I'm going to figure out my rows. I'm going to say, go ahead and go in the engine, map mass airflow, use bank A for the mass flow rate, right, out of all these different things that are available here. Double click that. This window, I've heard a lot of different feedback about. Some say using the generic sensor is the best because it keeps things clear, and it makes sure that HPTuners is going to the right place. I've heard others say, under no circumstances use generic. You should be sticking with the precise sensor you mean to be using. I think there's something to both of those theories. For today, we're going to be strict, and we're going to, just like we turned off LTFTs, we're going to stick with the sensor we're pointing to and not go generic. You're not going to break anything. Sometimes people, when they see things like this, are like, oh my God, am I going to screw this up? You're not going to screw it up either way, honestly. It's a preference thing. So for now, though, no, I know what I'm doing. Okay. And now I have a row set up where it's going to be breaking things along this line, right? But it needs a set of axes. It needs values. And those values are what I just copied from above. Of course, right? Okay, so one more trick here, right? I've got bank 2, I've got these values, I'm going to copy them, and I have to come over here, and I have to get them into this format, right? I have to adjust my dynamic breakpoints. The exercise of going in Excel, it's not the most fun thing in the world, right? But I do need to transpose these numbers, so hang on. Nope, I don't want B. Or I don't want D, rather. I want B, because B has that. Okay. And now I'll come in, copy, transpose, and then copy the transpose. And this time, instead of going straight and dropping it in, which is a pain in the ass because then I have to do all that deleting, I'm going to go to Word. And within Word, I'm going to right click. I'm going to do the keep text only values. You can see it's got this noise here, right? And so I can highlight that space and I can copy it. And I can come over here to my good friend replace. And I can say, find that bastard. I controlled V and pasted it and replace it with one space. Hey, look at that. Yeah. And then I can just grab this, copy, come here, et voila, right? Way easier. Makes that process easier. There's probably some kind of macro I could write, but it is what it is. Okay, so now we have a clean axis here. We got values from 0. It stretches out all the way to 522, and it corresponds to this fella right here. Okay, so now that's that graph. Having defined it, let's go ahead and make a version. We're going to duplicate this by using this feature right here, clone graph. And I want to, instead of bank 1, remember we have 2 mass airflows. So I'm going to set this up for bank 2. I'm going to call this one. Okay, so now we have MAF B, and we have values that go from 0 to, let's see, 514, which is great because it matches up to what we should see here in bank B, right? So close that fella. So now we have these 2 maps, right? So all that screwing around, let's see what we actually got here. Okay, so there's actually something else I want to do here. You want to have some colors on these because it'll help you see what's going down. So if you do 25, that's a percentage, and that's positive, right? This one would be negative 25. So 25 above means that I added fuel, which means I was running lean, which I like to show as, because when you run lean it's hot, I choose the color red. For this one, negative percentage means I took fuel away, which means there was too much gas, which makes me kind of sick. So I have it this like sickly green color, right? When we do that, what's good for one is good for the other. So let's do this one too. Okay, so that's that. So, looking at my MAF here, it would appear that I'm in these pockets running lean, right? Now if we look at B, and you see there that we lost our decimal places because I need to go up here and say, give me 2. Now we see B also is rather lean. So the question now is, do I trust this data? The answer is no, I don't, because this is a raw, I have not massaged this data in any way. What you're seeing me do is, based on previous experience, I like to use where that angle for a whole second is less than 5 degrees. So throttle angle measures the change in the throttle as you're pushing the pedal. Okay, so that's what I'm saying. Show me only throttle positions where we're not changing around on the pedal. And then that's the upper bound. I want stuff that's less than 5, but I want it inverted as a lower bound. And what I think this is saying is, for the second ahead, it should be less than 5 degrees, and the second behind me, it should be less than 5 degrees, is what that's saying. If this seems mysterious, you don't need to sweat it too much. Just do a good old-fashioned copy and paste, right? Steal from my homework, right? And enter this. What I was just saying was, within here, we've got our filters that we've set up. So again, that's the throttle angle for the second ahead of me should have been less than 5 degrees of change, and the throttle angle for the second behind me should have been less than 5 degrees of change, which means we're in a steady state. And I'm only going to examine cylinder head temperatures that are in excess of 180 degrees Fahrenheit. Okay, and what's good for the one is good for the other, and that gives us some cleaner data. In this case, it doesn't fluctuate too much, but you can see I've filtered out some noise, right? And then these are numbers that I'm more inclined to trust. Now, what if our friend on the internet was right and MAF A bank 1 is not the way to go? If we go down to fuel trims and we do bank separated, which is an aggregate of the two, which is why I'm going to come over here and MAF average. Okay. Now I can see, oops. I can see that I forgot decimals. Okay. And now I can see the bank separated values, which interesting, because now you can have a gander, right? So, for example, at the 28 gram per second moment, the car had an error of 7.46 according to the bank separated model. And let's see, can't keep a thought in my head, 28, and over here it's 6.81 with that model. And then this tiny spot here at 5 grams per second, it was 1.68, and the bank separated 1.65. So you can see these are not too terribly divergent. And in my perspective, the jury is kind of out which one is the definitive proper one to use. Bank separated is, I think, what a lot of other people are using. And I notice that it is a little less extreme with some of the changes it wants to make. Actually, it's more extreme. That's 7. The average here, we're 7.43 on 40 grams seconds, 7.4, roughly the same, right? So I've tuned with both. Really it comes down to, is it working in the logs, right? So how do we do that, you ask? All right, so let's pick one or the other. Today I'll go with banks separated. We're trusting friends, so let's keep that trend going. Now, this is the magic. This is the big moment. If I highlight all this, again, I know these are errors. I can right click and I can copy with axis. Well, no, I'll leave the axis there. We'll just copy. So I have those values in memory now. What I'm going to do is go back up to my tune, airflow bank 1, and here it is. I'm going to right click and I'm going to use the magic command, paste special. Now, a word of warning. I have two options here, multiply by percent and multiply by half. If we do the percentage, let's show you both. When I multiply by percent, dude, there we go. You can see now, red means I have lowered or increased those values. I've increased them, right? Because that's what we were told, right? The ECU, going back here, just so you fully understand what's going on, the ECU, or the scanner said, thanks to the ECU telling us, in these points, the trims were lean by this percentage. So you have to increase fuel by this percentage, right? So what I did was go up here, paste those percentages as percentages, and you can see if I back it up, right, let's take, for example, let's see what 6,000 changes. 6,000 changes from 28 to 30. 2 points. That's not crazy, but, it's not insignificant either. And see here as well, we didn't change the 7750 here, this value, the 52, which is this guy. What happened? We don't know, right? And also look how that's kind of, it's a little janky, right? That's a big change, which is why I don't really like how HPTuners act sometimes. I don't really like making big swings like that when we're dealing with small numbers. If these were 15, 20, I would say, okay, I would say you can use the brute force. In this case, I'm going to recommend we multiply by half, right? And that makes it's a little less drastic. And if you keep following the main percentage, the full percentage, you end up chasing yourself. But if you're using halves, you'll kind of circle in on values and calibrations, right? And so now you see we've made these adjustments across the board. It's not the smoothest in the world. Sometimes I would like to smooth this, but for now, just as an exercise, we're going to leave that be. Okay, we'll just take the raw value here. So that's bank 1. For bank 2, coming back down here, just like we use this value, the bank separated, let's use bank separated for B, highlight the data, we're going to copy it, we're going to come back up here, get all those highlighted, paste special, multiply by half, we're going to confirm that we have changed values, and that is the adjustment. That's it. That's the tune, right? And now that we've changed the file, we want to be very careful. And I should have done this before. We don't want to save it to the 1.0. We want to save it to the 1.1. And now what I will do is go to the car, having saved this, right? And we will load it, and we get to take a whole other data pull. So let's see how we did. Okay, we're back. All right, let me go up here. So let's see. First thing I like to do, good habits, is I immediately change my tune to iteration 1.2, which is the third iteration, even though it's 1.2. Having done that, and let's close this bank. Okay, so we know we can come back and make changes. Over here in Scanner, saved this. Let's disconnect since I haven't done that yet. And change this name. Well, save this as 1.1. Right, anytime I pull in, the first thing I do is I save my file names. Now we know we can see the results. So let's take a look. How about that? That is what you want to see, right? Oh, love that. Anytime I'm within 2, high fives all around. And then for the LTF to bank separated. So a little work to do here on the bank separated. And I'll tell you something. See how, let's see, we're getting up to 61, but here we're at 64. Here we're at 62. Here we're up to 65, and we have this data point. Okay, so what's going on here? One thing is, when I'm out there, I'm very careful to try and hit top end, right, of the band and really spend time in the places that matter. And so this one, I really made sure to get up to like around 6,000, right? Above that, I don't really care. One thing you want to think about as you look at this, decide if you want to use this as calibration data, is these are averages. And again, this is the average error for each of these gram-second breakpoints. The count also matters. And here, I got 1,100 pieces of data. Here I had 719, right? As I go up and I spend less time in this part of the power band, my counts go down, right? And I would say that's why the cell count matters. So with 5, right, I don't know if I trust this. And let's see, it's telling me, well, hey, no, I trust it. It's very good. Clearly, I'm within 1%. I'd like to believe that, right? But these counts, right, you get a little shaky. So it's, again, another reason to go to half percentage multiplier, right? Because you don't want to make a big swing in your MAF curve with that little data. But it is enough to make some adjustments. And I'm pleased to see here that both of these agree. Down low, we got a lot tighter. Up high, we still have some work to do, and that's okay. Within 5 is a competent professional calibration. Within 2 is God mode, right? So just like before, what I can do is come to my MAF average, highlight these values, copy. We go over to our file here. We go to bank 1. Highlight, paste special, multiply by halvesies. Confirm we did a thing. We did. Doesn't look too bizarre. And having done the 1, we're going to come to bank 2. Come back down here. Again, working from the averaged against the bank. This one, got proud of that. It's good stuff right there. Then we'll copy this, come back up, paste special, halvesies. Look at that. That's the process, right? So now, having touched them both up, right, we're back in bank 1 to get ready for the next run. I have to copy. So with these numbers in hand, I will probably make one more run just to tighten this up even more. And after that, with 3 rips, you have pretty much dialed it in. 4, I think, would be overdoing it, right? You just want to get to the point where, again, within 5 across the board is really good. And you can see here, we're pretty much there. Okay, we have returned from the adventure. Well, first thing I do when I come back, having already saved my log file with the correct name, is I go straight to the iterator, and we do 1.3. We're going to hope this is the final dial-in. We shall see. Start at bank 1. Bloop, bloop, bloop. Okay. And I'll come back down here. Here's the log. Let's see. Hey. That's not bad. That's not bad at all. Still a little lean, but there's our raw numbers. Those look good. And then just for fun, this guy. Okay, and then one thing. Yep. And then short terms. There you go. So compared to the first run, right, we've still got little pockets where we're lean, but we're starting to see some pockets where we're on the side of rich, which is okay. So there you have it. I think what we will do is take this final dial in. So let's show you how we do that. We've been through it. It's pretty routine now, right? Come up here, bank 1, multiply by half. Good to go. Come over here to bank 2. Grab this guy. By half. And that is that. So at this point, I feel good at this with this. You may say to me, hey, it's still a little lean. What do you think? We know. Do you want to not get it fully in there? And here's the thing. If this was a MAF-driven system, I would absolutely probably do another round or two of calibration, including at wide open throttle. But, spoilers, I've said it many times in my other videos, the speed density tables are what really govern trims. And so just for fun, these bad boys. Okay. Let's go to a vertical split. Okay. These are the tables we really want to spend our time with, right? Because this is what's being used at partial throttle. This is what's being used at full power. And in many cases, the MAF is redundant. It is relied on and it's redundant. It is not governing things of substance, right? So we can see with the data that we are more dialed in than we were, which was the whole goal. There could be some stuff going on here with speed density in some cases taking over, although they are pretty calibrated already. Point being, this is good enough, right? You can see here across the board, my average value is what, 2 or 3? And here, like I said, if everything is under 5, you're good. I suspect with these, when I dial this in, they will probably shrink down to like here. It could be, though, that this bubble, because it's like a partial throttle bubble, it could be that speed density is doing some things here, right? That, hey, what are you going to do? So with those adjustments in hand, we're good. That would conclude MAF, okay? So to finish out the process, however, remember, we did a whole bunch of stuff. And there we go. Okay. So the airflow, right, we just put a bunch of work into that. So we're not going to do anything with that, right? But cylinder air anticipation, just for fun, if you want to see what the original file had, right, it's telling you, you can use this as the selector up here. It's saying, hey, that was enabled originally. So we're going to go ahead and make sure that is enabled again. And that is good to go. We know that we changed other things. Let's say, for example, that you're confused, though. You forgot. I don't know what I did. A reminder, again, go to view the comparison log. And now, so we don't want to screw with those. But, oh, right, I forgot. my LTFT. I had, right? So there you go. That's fixed now. And then I happen to remember that our cutoff, the original value was 1200 and 1000. So we're going to put those back. And we're going to enable our cat control again. And we've done that guy already. So just to, it shows the difference between the two. The difference is 0, so therefore they're the same. So yeah, that should be that. So let's save. Having saved, I think it redoes that. Oh, no. Anyway, we've touched what we need to, right, having checked it. So that is that. There are 2 mysteries remaining. And I will say this. One is, you just saw me turn all that stuff back on, right? And I'm going to go flash that to the car, and we're in good shape. In fact, while we're doing this, I'm going to actually use that to update my base tune file, because I'm glad I put a little time into my MAF. But yeah, I just turned all that stuff back on, and you may see. So the next phase is speed density, and in speed density, instead of a 2-dimensional fueling calibration table, we're going to work on a 3-dimensional, like I showed you, and so that gives us that nice, cool graph. But wait, aren't those adjusters? Isn't the D-cell fuel cutoff and the cat over temp, isn't that going to possibly interfere with speed density as we do the exact same process, mapping cells against their error and then using the error to adjust those cells in the model? It would, but that is where we want those protections, because we are going to be doing things like partial throttle and wide open throttle when we're doing speed density. In fact, we're going to do a lot of that. And that's where we're going to up our game with filters, right? With MAF, we had some very simple basic filters. With speed density, we're going to get more sophisticated, and we're going to really isolate the data we're looking for and then use that to tune against. So yeah. And then the other mystery I was going to show you is, you may be looking at this graph, and you may be saying, hey, even with the raw data, I've noticed you really don't break into the hundreds and beyond. That's weird. I mean, I understand we're not going to the tippy top, right? But, you know, we've never really gotten up here. Why is that? I should cue the Jeopardy music, right? But it's almost as if those MAF sensors aren't 1 baro sensors, but 2 baro, 2 atmosphere sensors. So it's not, half of it is what a regular atmosphere would be, right? And the other half is an atmosphere that has somehow doubled. How would that happen, you ask? Well, it's almost as if the good people at Whipple said to the Ford guys, you know what you should do is put MAF sensors in that are already capable for registering airflow from forced induction. Oh shit, son. I suspect, I haven't confirmed this, I'm interested in anybody who might know this, right? But I suspect the reason we have so much overhead on these MAF logs here is because that is an area that you would see light up if you had a supercharger going or turbo going. So we'll see if I'm right, because Whipple is hopefully in our future here. So with that, that's a lot of material. Thanks for tuning in if you've gotten through all of this. And yeah, from here, next time we're going to start doing speed density stuff. That will be probably 2 or 3 videos like this one. There's a lot to it, but it really isn't much harder than what we did today. And you'll find the rule of 3 tends to apply, which is for any given area that we're tuning, 3 iterations often gets you dialed in enough, right? Sometimes as little as 1 or 2, sometimes 4, but usually around 2 or 3, more often than not 3. So as we move through our way with speed density, you'll see how that comes to play. And then once that's all squared away, then we can start having fun, right? So we can power add. Okay, so thanks a lot. We'll end here for today and go forth, and happy tuning.